In the early 2000s, NASA came up with a plan to use the Air Force's F-15 Eagle and the Navy's famed AIM-54 Phoenix missile to slash the cost of experimenting with hypersonic flight. The effort wasn't aimed at developing a new capability for America's fleet of air superiority fighters, but rather at learning more about the unique challenges of flight at speeds in excess of Mach 5, or the hypersonic barrier. Today, hypersonic weapons are all the rage, with multiple nations pursuing their development and at least 3 already in service around the world. But as we've discussed a number of times in the past, hypersonics are nothing new. The United States has been toying with hypersonic flight since before the space race began and had a series of successful tests on different platforms in the 1990s and 2000s before shifting focus and funding to the global war on terror. Today, the U.S. hypersonic efforts continue to be hampered by the limits of America's testing infrastructure and the immense costs associated with developing weapons and platforms capable of managing these extreme speeds. Back in 2006, those same concerns were the impetus behind NASA's Phoenix missile hypersonic testbed concept, which aimed to use the Navy's legendary air-to-air missiles to gather data about hypersonic flight for a comparably tiny cost. The trick was, while the Phoenix missile was incredibly fast, it wasn't hypersonic. But NASA felt confident they could pull a bit more speed out of the air-to-air legend. By the time the idea was proposed, the US Navy had already taken the AIM-54 Phoenix missile out of service, so if NASA could make their idea work, they'd have plenty of old missiles laying around to do it with. NASA wanted to find a low-cost way to conduct hypersonic flight research, or more specifically, they were looking for an inexpensive step between ground testing and full-fledged flight demonstrators. The solution, they surmised, was to develop an air-launched system with programmable guidance that they could fly with different scientific payloads at a price point low enough to allow for multiple launches per year. Because the Navy had a stockpile of decommissioned AIM-54 Phoenix missiles that already boasted a top speed of around Mach 4.3, about 3,300 miles per hour, it seemed like the best possible candidate for the job. NASA assigned their Dryden Flight Research Center's Thomas Jones to head the effort. All Jones would have to do is find a way to pull another 500 or so miles per hour out of the weapon and they would have themselves a readily available, inexpensive hypersonic flight test platform that fits smack between the supersonic tests they could conduct with fighters and the Mach 7 and better tests they could conduct with platforms like their previous X-43 test platform and forthcoming X-51. The AIM-54 Phoenix missile was an air-to-air weapon designed specifically for engaging Soviet bombers at long ranges from the Navy's in-development F-111V. The weapon was a continuation of the lineage of the AIM-47 Falcon missile that was to be carried by Lockheed's F-12 interceptor that never made it into service. By October of 2006, NASA has confirmed that they could stick a Phoenix missile to their F-15, but they still had a long way to go to prove they could make it achieve hypersonic velocities. In order to be successful, their plan called for having the F-15 climb at speeds higher than Mach 2, or around 1,534 miles per hour with the Phoenix missile attached. Once it reached the appropriate speed and altitude, the missile would be released and have its solid propellant rocket motor fire as its guidance system oriented the weapon's nose down toward the ground at an angle designed for the highest attainable speed, rather than the fastest route. While the Navy was right that adding a 13-foot, 1,000-pound missile to the bottom of an F-15 compromised some of its maneuverability, the Eagle still had more than enough power to reach supersonic speeds with a Phoenix strapped to its belly. So, the first thing NASA had to do was create a means to mount the massive weapon to their F-15B research fighter. Because the entire effort was meant to be a cost saver, NASA attempted to reuse F-14 hardware wherever possible, making for a functional, if not aesthetically pleasing, mounting apparatus beneath the center line of the F-15. Image from NASA PowerPoint showing the F-15B's Phoenix missile mounting apparatus. The missile itself, however, needed a much more thorough redressing to push it past the Mach 5 barrier. First, all of the internal components related to the missile's guidance system and explosive payload were completely removed, including its guidance computer and radar tracker, leaving just its propulsion and control sections at the rear of the missile intact. The result was a slightly leaner AIM-54 Phoenix missile that could be mounted and carried by an F-15B while offering around 5.5 cubic feet of payload space.